The storm came in slow, like the city was holding its breath. Heavy clouds pressed low over the skyline, windows trembling as wind clawed at the glass. Elias Carter stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, sleeves rolled to his elbows, jaw set with the kind of precision that came from a lifetime of self-control. He had built this life from nothing. Polished stone floors, imported leather furniture, rooms so quiet that even thoughts seemed to echo. Success had always been his language, discipline his heartbeat. Mira Hale sat on the edge of the white sofa, fingers curled around the sonogram photo, the grainy shapes still fluttering like miracles on her tongue. Her voice was soft when she finally said it again, as if maybe repetition would make the moment settle correctly into the room. 3, Elias. Not 1, not 2, 3 babies. Her smile was small, uncertain, waiting for him to share the wonder, but Elias didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Something cold and invisible wrapped fingers around his spine and dragged him backward through time, into a kitchen with yellowed wallpaper, a glass bottle shattering, his mother crying without sound, his father's voice like thunder, his father's absence like a second storm that never ended. A childhood full of hunger, for love that didn't come, for gentleness that didn't exist. Elias had learned to survive by shutting the door inside himself and never opening it again. He swallowed, but the air caught like glass in his throat. Triplets, he said, the word foreign in his mouth. 3, Mira's smile faltered. She had known fear might come. She had not expected the silence. Elias! She stood and moved toward him, slow, careful, like approaching a wild animal. Talk to me. His hands were shaking. He forced them into stillness, forced himself to face her. Her eyes were warm, wide, trusting. Too trusting. I can't, he said. The storm outside cracked lightning across the sky. Mira stared at him. Can't what? Be a father. Her breath left her in one sharp exhale. You don't mean that. You're in shock. No, he said, a whisper but final. I know myself. I know what I came from. I know what I become. His voice broke just once. I don't want to do to them what was done to me. You're not your father. Her hand trembled as she reached for him. He stepped back. The space between them widened like a fault line splitting open. Mira, listen to me. He tried to steady his voice. I will provide everything you and the children need. Everything. The best doctors. The best home. The best schools. You will never struggle. You will never want. I will make sure of that. Her eyes filled, but not with the kind of tears that came from weakness. These were the tears of something breaking that had once been whole. You think love is something you can outsource, she whispered. You think a check can hold a child at night. Elias, they don't need your money. They'll need you. He turned away because he couldn't bear her voice when it cracked like that. Couldn't bear to see the only person who had ever loved him without condition hurting because of him. Couldn't bear to imagine 3 small faces someday looking at him with disappointment he would deserve. He picked up his coat. She didn't try to stop him. He paused at the door, shoulders shaking in a way he hid badly. I'm doing this to protect them, he said, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. No, Mira whispered, clutching her belly like she could shield the 3 small lives inside from the world already. You're protecting yourself. He didn't answer. He walked out. The elevator doors closed with a soft hiss, sealing the moment like a wound stitched too tightly. Mira stood alone in the vast, silent penthouse. Snow began to fall against the windows, soft and soundless. She pressed her palm to her stomach, tears finally slipping free. You're not broken, she said into the quiet. He is. Outside, the storm raged on. The sun had not risen yet, but the city was already awake with noise and motion and cold. The world did not pause just because Mira was tired or afraid, or carrying more love than her body seemed built to hold. She lived now in a small apartment with thin walls and a window that rattled when the wind blew. Nothing about it was grand or shining or promising, but there was space enough to place 3 small cribs side by side, and that was enough to call it home. The weeks after Elias walked away unfolded like pages soaked in rain. Slow, heavy, difficult to turn. She worked mornings at a tiny corner diner where the smell of frying oil clung to her skin even after she scrubbed it raw. She wiped tables while her belly grew larger and heavier, and the other waitresses pretended not to see the swelling fear behind her smile. People assumed she had someone. A partner may be busy or working or away on business. No one imagined she had been left before the first lullaby, and she did not correct them. The nights were worse. Behind closed doors and dim lamplight there was silence. Too much silence. She would lie awake with one hand resting over the curve of her stomach, counting the heartbeats inside her. 3 of them. Sometimes she would whisper to them like secrets spoken through cracked glass. Sometimes she would tell them stories about oceans and warm sunlight and laughter. Sometimes she simply breathed and hoped that would be enough. As her due date approached, the world around her seemed to tighten its grip. Rent notices slipped under the door with numbers that did not care about love or fear or the rising price of formula. Her body ached in places she had no names for. Sleep became a memory. Food became something measured carefully and eaten slowly, but something else grew too. Not bitterness, not despair, something sharper. Something like iron being forged in flames. A strength born from necessity. A knowing that these children would not just be hers to love. They would be hers to protect. One night the snow fell heavy again, just like the night Elias left. The city lights blurred against the frost as Mira walked home from the diner. Her breath visible in the cold air. Her steps slow and measured. Halfway across a bridge, her body tightened with a sharp, sudden pain that made her clutch the railing. Another pain followed. Then another. Her time had come early. Too early. The hospital was loud and bright and full of rushing feet and urgent voices. They moved her quickly through hallways, while the world blurred into white coats and rapid instructions. The pain became everything. All she could do was breathe and pray that 3 small hearts would keep beating through the chaos. When the first cry came, it was sharp and angry, as though announcing a fight. The second came softer but sure. The third did not come right away. The room changed then. Voices lowered. Urgency thickened. Mira begged silently in the dark spaces of her mind. Please breathe. Please stay. Please stay with me! Then a weak cry finally broke through the noise. Small, fragile, but alive. Mira closed her eyes. Tears slid down her temples unnoticed. Her world had changed forever. The storm had taken one thing from her, but it had given her 3 reasons to rise again. Far away, in a penthouse of quiet glass and polished stone, Elias woke suddenly at that same moment. He did not know why his chest felt heavy. He did not know why he could not breathe for a long, quiet second. He only knew something had shifted in the world, and the world would not be the same. Morning came slow and grey through the hospital window. Mira woke to silence that felt heavy and strange. The kind of silence that comes after storms. The room smelled of antiseptic and winter air. 3 tiny cribs stood beside her bed, but only 2. Held warmth, nurses moved quietly, faces, careful voices, soft in ways that made fear grow sharp inside her chest. Where is the smallest one, she asked, though she already knew the answer in her bones. The nurse hesitated, the kind that hesitates when truth is too heavy to hold. She is in the neonatal unit. Her heart needs help to remember its rhythm. She is fighting, fighting. Mira repeated the word in her mind like a prayer, like a command, like a promise. She stood even though her body felt stitched together. By pain and exhaustion she walked. Even though her legs trembled, she reached the glass room where machines hummed and lights blinked, where tiny lives dangled between this world and the next. There she was. Noah, smaller than her sisters, small enough to fit in the space between 2 palms' wires across her chest, a machine keeping count of her heartbeats. Each one a quiet miracle. Myra pressed her hand against the glass, a whisper slipping from somewhere deep. You stay with me. I will not lose you. But promises did not pay for surgeries, and love did not erase the cost of survival. The doctors spoke in numbers and risks and urgency. Myra listened even when her ears rang and her vision blurred. They said the surgery would be expensive. They said the sooner the better. They said the window was short, money always money, the price of miracles carved in cold ink and signed with desperation. She had nothing, no savings, no insurance beyond the bare minimum, no partner by her side. And still, she refused to break. But that night, when the hospital lights dimmed, when the halls fell quiet, when the world felt far away, Myra allowed the truth to settle in her chest. She could not save Noah alone, no matter how hard she worked, no matter how much. She bled, no matter how brave she became. She needed help, the kind only one person in this city could give. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone. His number was still there, untouched, like a wound that never closed. She stared at it for a long time, long enough to feel the weight of every memory, every promise, every abandonment. She did not call, not yet, but the knowing sat heavy behind her ribs one day. Soon she would have to knock on the door she never wanted to see again, across the city. In the penthouse of glass and silence, Elias stood at his window, hands clenched, unsteady breath fogging the glass. He did not know why he could not sleep, did not know why his chest felt tight, did not know why the city lights looked like something was missing. But something inside him whispered a voice he had tried to bury long ago. Go back. He ignored it, but the whisper did not fade. It only grew stronger, and soon it would be loud enough to break him completely. The snow had melted, and the city had traded its white silence for wet pavement and cold wind. Mira stood outside the hospital with two strollers pushed together, side by side. Her daughters slept, curled like warm secrets. Noah was still inside, hooked to monitors, and hope Mira kept. Her hands in her coat pockets, so no one would see them, shaking. She had stopped pretending she could do this alone. She had stopped pretending strength was something that never cracked. She walked to the payphone near the parking garage because using her own phone felt too personal and too close to shame. The metal was cold against her palm. Her breath came slow and uneven. She dialed his number from memory because forgetting him had never been the part she could control. It rang once, twice, then. His voice came through, steady, familiar, warm in a way that made the ground tilt under her feet. Hello. Mira did not speak. She could not hello. He repeated, a hint of confusion threading through his tones. She opened her mouth, only one word surfaced. Noah. Silence, stretched thin between them, dangerously thin. Then his voice dropped to something fractured as the baby. Mira closed her eyes. No, she needs surgery soon, very soon. Another silence. But this one was different. He was not holding his breath. He was drowning. In it, Where are you, Hospital, Mount Sinclair, Pediatric Wing, 3rd floor. I am coming, he said. The phone line clicked dead. No hesitation, no negotiation, no questions, just movements. He stood there long after the call ended because the world had shifted. A second time, and shifts always come with aftershocks. Inside the hospital lobby, nurses rushed between stations. Families whispered blessings or bargains to ceilings. Life and death walked the same hallways without acknowledging each other. Myra returned. To Noah's room, the machines hummed in calm rhythms, tiny chest rising and falling, like the world was balancing on breaths too small to see. The door opened. He stepped in. Elias did not look like the man who had left. He looked like someone who had not slept in weeks, shirt-wrinkled jaw, shadowed eyes, hollow like the city had carved grief into him, where success once lived. He moved toward the crib slowly, as if approaching something sacred, and maybe he was. His hand hovered above Noah's blanket. He close but not touching. His voice broke when he spoke. She looks like you. Mira looked at him, really looked, and the anger she expected to ignite did not come. Instead, there was something heavier, something tired, something worn, thin. She needs the surgery. Mira said, and I cannot do it alone. He nodded, not like a decision, like a surrender. I will take care of it. But his eyes did not leave Noah, and it was not money he was offering. Not this time. It was something far more terrifying. Presence. The nurse entered. with paperwork numbers printed in black ink like demands from the universe, numbers that had felt impossible only an hour ago. Elias signed without looking at the cost. His hand did not tremble, but when the nurse left, the silence returned different than before. Not empty. Fulmira sat down, exhaustion pushing her into the chair. Elias took the second chair beside her. Close, not touching but close, they watched the monitors together. They did not speak yet. Everything between them was loud. On the other side of the glass, snow began again. Soft, slow, quiet, the kind of snow that does not erase, but reveals what has been broken and what may still be repaired. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. The night stretched long and quiet around them, like something waiting to break. Mira sat beside Noah's crib, her fingers wound gently through the tiny strands of fine hair, her touch careful, her heartbeat louder than the machines that kept count of her daughter's breaths. She did not cry. She had already spent all her tears in the days before. Elias sat across from her, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped, head bowed like a man kneeling before an altar he never believed in, but now needed more than air. Neither spoke words, felt too fragile, too breakable, too small for what lived between them. When the overhead lights flickered dim for night cycle, Noah's sisters stirred in their strollers. Tiny, soft sounds of dreaming. Mira rose to tend to them, her movements slow and practiced the grace of a mother who had learned to move while exhausted, because stopping meant remembering how heavy everything was. She tucked blankets around them, kissed two warm foreheads, then looked back to where Elias still sat, motionless, haunted. "You should go home," she said, her voice a whisper worn thin. He lifted his head slowly, eyes red, tired. "I can't leave her." Mira's breath caught like something fragile. Inside her had been touched, not broken, just touched. She stepped closer, not close enough to touch, but close enough to see him clearly. "You left once," she said, soft, not accusing, just truth laid bare. He nodded, the movement small, tight. "I have been leaving every day since," he answered, as if all the oxygen in his chest had been replaced with grief. The room fell quiet again, but not empty, filled with something unspoken, something waiting. Hours passed, or maybe seconds. Time meant nothing in rooms where hearts were being bargained for. When dawn came, the doctor arrived, gentle, firm, ready to take Noah to the operating room. Mira leaned over and kissed her daughter's forehead. Her whisper, a prayer made of trembling breath, "Come back to me." Elias leaned in too, but he did not speak. His tears landed on the blanket instead. Small, quiet confessions of a man who had run from love and found himself kneeling before it again when they wheeled Noah away. Mira's hands reached for air, empty air. The kind that feels like drowning without thinking, without hesitation. Elias reached for her hand. She froze, every muscle tightening, every memory rising, but she did not pull away. Their hands stayed joined, shaking, but joined. The waiting room felt a cold, sterile, indifferent. They sat side by side, watching the clock, listening to the distant echoes of footsteps and hushed conversations. And then the doors opened. The surgeon stepped out, her face unreadable. Mira stopped breathing. Elias gripped her hand tighter. There was a silence, then a soft, steady voice. She made it through. Mira's knees gave out. Elias caught her before she fell, not in an embrace of lovers, but in the way two broken souls hold each other when the alternative is shattering. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not forgiveness, not healing, just the beginning of something they were both still afraid to name. But beginnings are often quiet, like the first heartbeat after a long silence, like a child breathing on her own for the first time. And somewhere deep inside, Elias, a door he had sealed shut years ago, opened just enough for light to slip through. The days after the surgery blurred into one long stretch of time that had no beginning and no end. Mira Slept in fragments, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, always waking to check the rise and fall of Noah's small chest, always listening for alarms that might mean the world was collapsing again. Elias stayed. No one asked him to, no one told him. He could, but he stayed. He sat in the chair beside the hospital bed, the same chair every night, as if leaving it would mean disappearing again. He read medical pamphlets until the words blurred. He memorized medication schedules. He learned how to silence minor monitor alerts without calling a nurse. He learned to hold Noah without disturbing the lines taped to her skin. The nurses started whispering, not with judgment, but with curiosity. They had seen fathers who visited fathers who hovered. Awkwardly fathers who avoided looking into bassinets because the weight of responsibility was too much, but they had never seen a man who returned and returned and returned, like a tide that refused to recede. Mira noticed it too, even when she tried. Not to, but the heart does not forget who hurt it, so it did not soften. Not yet an evening. The sky outside turned purple. The hallway lights flickered as the hospital generator tested. The world was quiet except for the gentle hum of machines keeping children alive. Mira stepped out to the courtyard for air. Her breath formed clouds in the cold, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. She tried to feel present, but exhaustion had hollowed her out. The courtyard door opened behind. Oh, she did not have to look to know it was him. She could feel him now, the way you can feel heat from a fire without touching it. Elias stood beside her, not too close, but close enough. There was silence. Not sharp silence, not painful. A silence that felt like something was being built carefully, slowly. Mira spoke first, her voice quiet, flat, from too many sleepless nights. You cannot stay forever. This isn't your life. Elias stared straight ahead at nothing and everything. It has been my life since. The moment you said her name, he answered. But the words were soft, not dramatic, not desperate, just true. Myra looked at him, then really looked. He did not look like the man who left. He looked like a man who had been unraveling slowly and was finally choosing to stitch himself back together, but wanting to heal does not erase damage. You are here now because she almost died. She said you came when the fear was great enough. He flinched, but he did not turn away. And you think I will leave when the fear fades, he said, like a confession spoken into frost. Mira's silence was an answer. Elias rubbed his hands together slowly, as if trying to warm something deep inside himself. I don't know how to be a father, he said. I don't know what love looks like. Up close, I didn't have an example. Every time I get close to caring, it feels like a threat, like something is going to explode, like I'm going to ruin everything. Mira listened, her breath hanging in the cold air. Then learn, she said, but her voice trembled. Not from anger, from exhaustion, from hope. She did not want learn. But this time, you don't get to practice on their hearts while you decide who you want to be. He closed his eyes just once and nodded. I know. The wind picked up leaves, skittered across pavement. Mira and took one step toward the door, then paused. Do not promise anything, she said. Promises are easy. Stay, just stay when it is quiet, when it is boring, when it is heavy, when it is ordinary. That is where fathers are made. Then she walked inside, leaving the words hanging in the cold air. Elias stood there not moving until the cold reached his bones, and yet he did not leave, because for the first time in his life he understood that love was not a fire or a storm or a grand gesture. Love was a chair beside, a hospital bed night after night, with nothing to offer except presence. Time moved differently now. Not in hours or days, but in the soft measurements of recovery, the monitor beeping steady, the sound of tiny breaths, the slow return of color to Noah's cheeks. When the doctors finally said the word stable, Mira felt her legs weaken, not from fear this time, but from relief so heavy it nearly brought her to the floor. Noah was moved from the intensive unit to a quiet recovery room, and the sisters were allowed to see her. Aria approached the crib first, her small hand reaching forward with the certainty of someone who had always known how to love without fear. Lena climbed up beside her eyes, wide and shining, whispering stories into Noah's ear about the colors of the sky and the taste of peaches and how the nurses wore shoes that squeaked. But Elias, he stood back. He watched his daughters together, the way their small bodies leaned into each other naturally as though they were born, knowing how to share space, how to breathe in the same rhythm, how to carry each other. He had never belonged to anything like that, not even as a child. For a moment he felt like a ghost in his own life, present, but not part of it, a witness to something sacred. He had once walked away from Mira, noticed she always noticed. "Come, get closer," she said softly, not as forgiveness but as invitation. Elias took one slow step, then another, until he stood beside the crib. Noah's eyes fluttered open just barely, as if waking from a long journey, and for the first time she looked at him, not with recognition, not with accusation, just with the open, calm gaze of a child who has not yet learned to fear. Love, his breath stuttered, his hand trembled as he reached out, not to touch, just to be close. Noah made a small sound, soft like a sigh, or maybe like acceptance, and Elias felt something inside him break, not like shattering glass, but like a lock coming undone. Later, when the girls had fallen asleep, curled against each other like petals in a flower mirror, and Elias stood in the dim light of the hallway. Mira leaned against the wall, exhausted. Elias stood beside her, hands in his pockets, shoulders heavy. "You can come back." She said the words quiet but sharp, because truth often cuts. You can come back into their lives, but not as a visitor, not as a ghost who appears and disappears. If you come back, Eustelius nodded, his voice low. "I want to stay. I don't know how to do it right, but I want to learn. I want to be here for all of it." Mira turned her head toward him, her eyes steady, not hopeful, not forgiving, just clear. "If you stay there will be hard days, days where you will hate yourself, days where you will want to run, days where the past will feel louder than the present. Can you face those without disappearing again?" Elias breathed out slowly, as if releasing years of fear he had been holding. "I will not leave again." Myra did not smile, she did not reach for him. She simply nodded once. "We will see." Because promises were just air, but presence, consistent, quiet, ordinary presence that could build worlds again if he chose to remain in it every day. They walked back into the recovery room, where 3 small forms slept under warm light, and for the first time Elias sat beside them. Not like he was borrowing space, but like he belonged there, even if he had to earn it, piece by fragile piece. When Noah was finally discharged from the hospital, the world outside felt too loud and too bright. The city didn't know it had almost lost a life. Cars still rushed people, still cursed traffic. The world continued as if miracles were ordinary. Mira carried Noah close to her chest, the monitor backpack small but heavy, like the memory of fear. Arya and Lena held onto the stroller handles, their steps clumsy but determined, a little army following their mother into the cold air. Elias walked behind them, not beside them, not leading, just there, present, learning how to exist in a space he once abandoned. When they reached the apartment building, the landlord was standing outside, arms crossed, expression carved from stone, a notice taped to the front door, rent overdue, final warning. Mira's stomach clenched, her heartbeat stumbled. She had known this was coming. Hospital stays meant missed shifts, and missed shifts meant bills stacking like storm clouds. She stood in front of the landlord, her voice steady even as exhaustion pulled at her bones. "Give me 2 weeks, just 2. The landlord shook his head. 2 days, no more. He turned and walked away. The notice fluttered in the wind, bright and cruel. Myra didn't move. The weight of survival pressed against her chest. How many battles could she fight before one broke here? Elias stepped closer, not touching, not crowding, just near. "I can take care of the rent," he said, quiet, careful. Myra didn't look at him. Her jaw tightened. "I don't need saving, I know," he answered, but they do. Her breath hitched, not in anger but in truth. She hated how true it was. "Money is not the problem," she said, voice low, tired. "The problem is that you think money repairs what you broke." And for the first time, Elias didn't flinch. He didn't defend himself, didn't argue, didn't try to justify. "I know," he said again, steady. "I am not asking to fix anything. I am asking to stay in the work of repairing." Mira closed her eyes. Repairing, not erasing, not replacing, repairing. When she opened her eyes, there was something different in her gaze. "Not forgiveness, but permission to try. You can help," she said, "but you do not take over. You do not control. You do not decide." For Eusebius nodded. "Anything. Whatever you say." Over the next days, he didn't just pay the rent. He repaired the broken stove. He replaced the drafty window. He installed soft lights so Noah could sleep without strain. He fixed the flickering hallway bulb the landlord had ignored. For months, Arya began leaving her crayons near where he sat. Lena began asking him to lift her so she could reach the cupboard. Noah reached for him once, just once, a small hand opening and closing in the air. Elias froze as if the universe had placed something holy in front of him. Mira saw it. She saw the way his chest rose, like breath returned to a man who had been suffocating for years. She saw how careful he was, how quiet, how he never asked for thanks, never asked for forgiveness, never asked to be seen. He just stayed. One night, after the girls had fallen asleep in a pile of tangled blankets, Mira found Elias sitting on the floor by the cribs, his head bowed, tears silently falling. No collapse, no performance, just grief and love mixing in. A way that broke the world open. She sat down beside him, not touching, just near. She did not speak, neither did he. Because some healing begins in silence, not by reaching but by not running, and this time he did not run. The first sign that the world was changing came on a quiet Tuesday morning, not through thunder or collapse, but through laughter. Soft, unsteady, real Noah laughed, a small sound, thin as a whisper, but bright, bright enough to fill the apartment like sunlight breaking through heavy curtains. Mira froze in the middle of folding laundry. Arya dropped her crayons. Lena gasped, the way children do when magic is suddenly real. Elias stood in the doorway holding a pot of soup he had learned to make because Mira had once mentioned it was her mother's recipe. He stopped breathing. Noah laughed again, reaching for Arya. Tiny fingers, curling eyes, bright, alive. The whole world felt different in that moment. Lighter, like the air had finally remembered how to move. And then, without warning, someone knocked on the door. A loud, sharp, businesslike knock. Mira's breath caught the kind of breath that comes before a storm. Elias set the soup down, carefully listening. Watching, Mira opened the door only halfway. Her sister stood there, the one who had not visited once in 2 years, the one who had said Mira ruined her life by choosing love over practicality, the one who had spread whispers about how Mira had chased a millionaire and lost him like a fool. Her sister's eyes widened when she saw Elias standing in the apartment, her voice sharpened like metal. "So the rumors were true. You let him come back." Mira's spine straightened, her hand tightened around the door. "Is here for the children." The sister laughed, not kindly, the kind of laugh that left bruises, the kind of laugh that said she came here for trouble. "For the children," she repeated as if the words were a joke. "Do you even know what people are saying? They are saying you trapped him. They are saying you planned it. They are saying you wanted to secure a rich life without working." Mira did not flinch. She had been accused of worse by her own thoughts on sleepless nights. "I work every day," she said. "I do not owe anyone my suffering." Her sister's gaze turned to Elias. "And you," she said, "what is your angle? Guilt, rebranding, or did you just get bored with your perfect life?" Elias did not speak at first. He walked past. Mira stood in front of her sister, eyes steady, voice quiet but unshakable. "I left," he said. "I chose fear. I chose selfishness, and I destroyed something beautiful. I will spend the rest of my life repairing what I broke." Her sister stared, caught off guard. She had expected arrogance, Charm, defense, not truth laid bare like open wound. She looked at Mira then, as if searching for confirmation, as if trying to find weakness. Mira only nodded once, a small, slow nod. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement of a reality, both brutal and simple. He is here now, she said, and this time he stays her sister. Did not have an answer. She left without another word. The hallway swallowed her steps. Inside the apartment silence returned, but not the kind that suffocates, the kind that settles, the kind that waits. Mira turned to Elias. "Why did you say that in front of her?" she asked. "Because it is true," he answered, "and truth is only real when spoken aloud." Noah reached for him, then small hands, steady, now strong Elias, lifted her slowly, carefully, as if holding something sacred. Mira watched her heart a quiet storm. She did not trust him completely. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. But trust is not built in confessions. It is built in mornings like this, where soup simmers quietly and children laugh and no one runs. Not anymore. Spring arrived quietly, not with celebration, but with gentle warmth curling through the apartment windows, the kind that makes flowers push through soil. Even when the earth still remembers winter, Noah no longer needed the monitor. Every hour Arya had learned to read her first words. Lena had begun singing to the birds outside the fire escape. The apartment felt full, not just with sound, but with a kind of peace that had once seemed impossible. Elias had not left, not once, not for work, not for fear, not for old ghosts whispering escape. Into his ear he learned how to braid hair with clumsy fingers, how to rock a child to sleep without asking for praise, how to cook breakfast quietly, because Mira worked nights. He learned how to exist inside routines, inside stillness, inside love. That did not demand performance. One evening they all sat on the floor together, a picnic of sandwiches and juice boxes spread across a blanket. Noah giggled as Elias made her stuffed bear dance aria, and Lena clapped in delight. Mira watched her back, resting against the wall, her heart resting for the first time in years. She had been waiting for the moment. The fear returned the moment her chest tightened, the moment she felt herself bracing for disappointment. But months had passed and he had stayed. When the girls fell asleep tangled in blankets, Mira stood and began cleaning up. Elias helped without speaking their movements, easy, familiar, a dance grown from repetition. He paused, watching her, the room dim and warm. Mira. His voice was soft, not heavy, not desperate, just honest. She looked up, waiting. "I have loved you every day, even when I was too damaged to understand what love was supposed to be. I loved you while I ran. I loved you while I broke us. I loved you while I watched. From far away, I love you now, and I am not afraid anymore." The words landed gently, not like lightning, not like a grand declaration, but like truth finally spoken in the right language. Mira stepped closer, her breath quiet, her eyes steady. "Love is not leaving," she said. "Love is staying when it is ordinary, when it is tiring, when it is quiet. Can you stay in that, not just today, but tomorrow and next month, and every dull, slow morning that comes after?" Elias's throat tightened, but his answer was simple. "I already." Mira did not kiss him. She did not rush into his arms. Love was not a firestorm anymore. Love was a slow sunrise. She rested her forehead against his, a quiet yes spoken without sound. And that was enough. Seasons passed. Noah learned to run slow at first, then faster, her laughter echoing across the small playground behind the apartmentaria. And Lena went to school, returning with paper crowns and paint on their shirts, their hearts whole, their trust unbroken. Mira returned to work, but not to survive, to live. And Elias, he did not return to the penthouse of glass and silence. He sold it, donated the funds to the neonatal unit that saved his daughter. And he walked away with nothing but the 3 girls who called him Papa, and the woman who finally knew he had learned how to stay one night. They all lay piled on the couch, the kind of tired that feels full, not empty. The girls fell asleep first, their small breaths warm their limbs, tangled like vines growing toward sunlight. Mira whispered into the quiet. We made it. Elias kissed the top of her head. Gentle, steady no, he whispered. We began, and outside the window, the city lights flickered softly as if bowing to a story that refused to break and instead learned how to heal.